1,000 men screaming, swords tearing through the air, blood dripping down armor. In the midst of this inferno, a samurai warrior closes his eyes for 3 seconds. His heart beats slowly. His mind is blank. While soldiers around him panic and die in despair, he takes a deep breath, opens his eyes, and moves his katana with surgical precision. How is it possible to maintain absolute calm when death is inches from your face? The secret behind this superhuman ability of the samurai goes far beyond simple courage. The reality is that samurai weren't born without fear. They trained to destroy fear from within. Every day before dawn, while Japan still slept, each samurai would wake up and do something disturbing. They would sit in a meditative position and spend 15 to 30 minutes imagining their own death, not quickly or abstractly. They visualized every detail: the blade of a katana piercing their chest, an arrow through their throat, warm blood flowing, breathing becoming increasingly difficult until the final moment. This macabre ritual had a name: constant preparation for death. In the book Hagakure, written in the early 18th century by Yamamoto Tsunetomo, one of the most important texts on the samurai code, it is recorded that the true warrior must practice death every morning and every night. The idea wasn't to become morbid or depressed. It was exactly the opposite. By fully accepting that death could come at any second, the samurai freed himself from paralyzing fear. He had already died mentally, so what else was there to fear? This philosophy had a specific name: living as if you were already dead. It sounds crazy, but it was brilliant. When you accept your death in advance, your brain stops wasting energy trying to avoid it. You become free to act without hesitation. And here's the fascinating detail. This wasn't just abstract philosophy. It was real neurological training. The samurai were literally reprogramming their brains, reducing the activation of the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear. Modern neuroscience studies confirm that repeated exposure to mental images of stressful situations actually decreases the panic response over time. But it wasn't just imagining death. There was a specific meditation technique called zazen, which means seated meditation. Every samurai practiced zazen daily. They sat upright, spine perfectly aligned, and focused exclusively on their breathing. Inhale, exhale. Observe the thoughts passing like clouds in the sky without clinging to them. It sounds simple, but it was brutally difficult to master. The goal was to achieve a mental state called mushin, meaning mindless mind or empty mind. In this state, the samurai didn't think during combat. He simply acted, without hesitation, without fear, without hesitation. The sword moved on its own, as if the body knew exactly what to do without needing to consult the conscious mind. Great swordmasters like Miyamoto Musashi and Yagyu Munenori wrote extensively about mushin. They described how, at the height of battle, there was no thought about technique, about winning or losing, about living or dying. There was only pure, instantaneous action. And could you train your mind to not think about anything during a moment of extreme danger? Leave your opinion in the comments. Now let's talk about something most people are completely unaware of: samurai breathing. It wasn't normal breathing. It was a specific technique called kokyu, and it was as important as knowing how to hold a sword. Samurai learned to breathe through their abdomen, not their chest. They filled the lower part of their abdomen, a region called the hara or tanden, considered the body's energy center. When you breathe deeply into your abdomen, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which literally calms your body. The heart rate decreases. Blood pressure drops. The mind becomes clear. In combat, this was the difference between life and death. A samurai who breathed through his chest would panic. His heart would race, his hands would tremble. But a samurai who breathed through his hara maintained total control. They trained specific breathing patterns. For example, inhaling deeply for 3 steps while advancing towards the enemy, then exhaling completely during the strike. The exhalation was not random. It was synchronized with each movement of the sword. Inhaling during defense to absorb energy. Exhaling during the attack to release maximum power. This respiratory control allowed them to fight for hours without tiring, even wearing heavy armor that could weigh more than 20 kilos. But there's more. Before each battle, samurai performed something called mokuso, a specific meditation to prepare for combat. They would sit in absolute silence, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups, and enter a state of total concentration. During Mokuso, they visualized every movement they would make in battle. They saw themselves blocking attacks, counter-attacking, maintaining perfect posture. This mental visualization created neural patterns that made movements more natural and automatic during the actual fight. Modern athletes use this same technique today, but samurai were already doing it more than 1,000 years ago. Another crucial aspect was the concept of zanshin, which means remaining spirit or continuous alertness. Even after defeating an enemy, the samurai never completely relaxed. He maintained total awareness of everything around him, every sound, every movement in the shadows, every possible threat. Zanshin was not paranoia. It was total presence in the present moment. A samurai in a state of zanshin could detect a surprise attack before it even began, because his attention was distributed in 360 degrees. They said that a true master could feel the intent to kill in the air, as if it were a palpable energy. This may sound mystical, but it was actually the result of years of perception training. The human brain is capable of processing subtle signals that the conscious mind does not register. Facial micro-expressions, minimal muscle tension, changes in an opponent's breathing pattern. A trained samurai picked up all of this instantly. And there's a detail that will surprise you. Samurai trained to feel calm even under extreme physical torture. There are historical accounts of Zen samurai masters who, even when severely wounded in battle, showed no pain. A famous case is that of Master Ta Hui, who had a painful ulcer on his hip. Doctors said he needed to stop meditating while seated because the pain would worsen. He completely ignored them and continued meditating day and night, focusing his mind in such a way that the ulcer simply disappeared on its own. Another impressive example is Yamaoka Teshu, one of the greatest swordsmen and Zen masters who ever lived. When diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer, he simply sat down to meditate, wrote his death poem, and passed away in complete peace and silence, showing no suffering. This was the level of mental control these warriors achieved. But how did they reach this level? The secret lay in training from childhood. Samurai boys began practicing meditation and emotional control at the age of 5 or 6. They were gradually exposed to frightening situations, cemeteries at night, dark forests, ghost stories. The goal was to desensitize them to fear little by little. Over time, their brains adapted. What once caused terror became just another situation to be handled calmly. In addition, the samurai spent extensive time in nature. They went to mountains and forests alone, sometimes for weeks, in silent retreats. They observed the water flowing in streams. They contemplated the moon. They sat under cherry blossom trees. This immersion in nature wasn't a vacation. It was active training in accepting impermanence. Cherry blossoms last only a few days before falling, just as human life is fleeting. Observing nature taught the samurai to accept change and loss without resistance. And finally, perhaps most importantly, the samurai had an unwavering commitment to their values. They followed Bushido, the way of the warrior, which included absolute loyalty, honor above all else, and benevolence even in times of war. When you have clear and unquestionable values, decisions become simple. There is no internal conflict. There is no paralyzing doubt. A samurai knew exactly what he was fighting for and what he was willing to die for. This clarity eliminated the existential anxiety that paralyzes most people under pressure. There were also lesser-known daily practices. The tea ceremony, for example, was not just a social ritual. It was meditation in motion. Every gesture had to be performed with total mindfulness. Japanese calligraphy, ikebana, even the way a samurai cleaned his sword, everything was done with meditative focus. These activities trained the mind to remain present and calm regardless of the task. The result of all this training? When battle finally arrived, the samurai didn't panic like ordinary soldiers. His body already knew what to do. His mind was empty of disturbing thoughts. His breathing was controlled. His heart beat slowly. He saw the battlefield with crystal clarity, as if watching from the outside. While others fought blindly, overwhelmed by adrenaline and terror, the samurai moved with calculated precision. This explains why individual samurai warriors could face multiple opponents simultaneously. It wasn't brute force or supernatural speed. It was absolute mental calmness allowing them to process information much faster than their panicked enemies.